During the past 2 years, as the world has had to contend with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen a varying degree of air travel restrictions and also quarantine requirements for arriving passengers at destinations. Now with the Omicron variant gaining attention, it's causing further strain and challenge for the aviation industry. It's one of the factors that's leading Cathay Pacific to cancel flights during the month of January, though the airline is also facing an internal challenge as it's facing discontent amongst its flight crew over the airline's quarantine requirements. Being Hong Kong's hometown airline, Cathay Pacific has had to contend with the quarantine requirements of the city, which would involve a quarantine of 21 days for suspected cases and those arriving into the city. Some consider these quarantine requirements as extreme, though Hong Kong is partaking in the zero-COVID policy, aligning itself with mainland China as it looks to reopen the cross-border travel between the mainland. For a city that highlights itself as Asia's World City, it has already impacted the passenger travel numbers and arrivals into Hong Kong, though the impact has been felt much more among the pilots of Cathay Pacific and other locally based flight crew. Meanwhile, inbound flight crew from other airlines from other parts of the world are required to stay in their transit hotel until their next flight out of Hong Kong. As a result of the 21-day quarantine requirement and to ensure the operational stability of Cathay Pacific in this trying time, pilots operating in deemed high-risk countries would volunteer for, quote, closed-loop rosters, which would last around 3 weeks. Ongoing since the early part of 2021, these closed loops would require pilots to stay at an intermittent stay at a Hong Kong hotel, isolating themselves from the rest of Hong Kong, their family and friends. Their movement would be limited to staying in the hotel and traveling to the airport with their flights, and upon arrival at the destination, they would also have in transit. Upon the completion of the shift, the pilots would then have a 14-day quarantine period. These stringent procedures have been ongoing since early part of 2021, and it recently gained more attention following the firing of 3 pilots who violated quarantine protocols while at Frankfurt. This suspected breach of protocol resulted in 150 Cathay Pacific staff and close contacts going into quarantine for around 21 days, and it led to more COVID protocols for pilots, including stepped-up checks on flight crew during layovers and stepped-up COVID-19 testing. For layovers in particular, pilots will have to head to the hotel without any stops. This is one aspect causing strain on Cathay Pacific's operations, which among the steps they are looking to take is basing pilots overseas in areas like Los Angeles for months at a time. These protocols in place to combat COVID-19 have now reportedly caused frustration and mental strain amongst the airline's pilots. One of the issues that has been raised is the quarantine in the hotel rooms, as pilots would not have access to sunlight or a gym. In a BBC report on December 7, an unnamed pilot going by the name of Pierre described staying at one of the facilities for quarantine for pilots like being in solitary confinement. Pierre did state also that he has spent almost 150 days in isolation within the year. This story and the stories of other Cathay Pacific pilots experiencing this is now making more headlines around the world. Also, it's affecting other airlines such as FedEx, which reportedly is closing down their pilot base in the city over the quarantine restrictions. This has also been the cause of a growing number of Cathay Pacific pilots reportedly leaving the company for other pilot jobs in other parts of the world. Not only affecting the aviation industry, the quarantine requirements is also affecting other industries in the city. On the side of Cathay Pacific, they do acknowledge the burden that has been placed on the aircrew, adding that they are providing more support, facilities, and amenities for the pilots. In the meantime, there is more reports of the growing discontent amongst the pilots of the airline, which going forward in the post-pandemic future, jeopardizing the airline's ability to maintain well-qualified and trained flight crew, along with the future recruiting of pilots. In this situation, it seems like Cathay Pacific is stuck in a rock and a hard place, as it does what it can to adhere to the rules and regulations of the city government of Hong Kong. Unless the regulations for the inbound quarantine in Hong Kong is changed, it seems that we might see more reports of strife and strain amongst the pilots of Cathay Pacific. I definitely hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. This has been Flights in Asia, highlighting the news and updates from the aviation and travel scene in the Asia Pacific. Thank you for watching and have a great day.